HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. Years had passed since the war on Mars. The red planet had changed. Where fire once burned, green life now grew, strange glowing moss that shone under the thin air. The humans called it Lyra's light, because it first appeared where the explosion had taken place. Scientists could not explain it. It healed metal, purified air, and made dead soil alive again. But Ethan Cole knew the truth. He stood on a high cliff overlooking the reborn colony. His hair had grown gray, his face older, but his eyes still carried that soft blue glow, the mark of the bond that never truly broke. He still wore a pendant around his neck, a small, glowing crystal, the same one Lyra had left behind. It pulsed gently with light like a heartbeat. Every night when the wind blew across the plains, he could hear her voice. Not words, but a feeling, not warmth, comfort, hope. The humans had rebuilt Mars using technology inspired by the crystal. Ethan shared what he had learned from Lyra's energy core: clean power, safe flight, and gravity control. The new colonies floated above the desert, peaceful and strong, but Ethan's heart was never fully at peace, because he still dreamed of the stars where she waited. One evening, while repairing an old rover near the crater, the ground began to hum, the same hum he'd heard on the night they first met. He froze. The crystal on his chest glowed brighter, warmer. He whispered, "Lyra?" The light pulsed faster. A voice echoed softly in his mind, clear and familiar. "Ethan." His breath caught. "Lyra, is that you?" "Yes," her voice replied, gentle as starlight. "Bond never died. Only sleeping, I wake. Because galaxy calls you." He looked up at the night sky, thousands of stars shining above. "Calls me? For what?" "To finish what we began," she said. "The Transcends were not the end. Others come, dark ones. They seek the same power, my power. Your world must be ready." Ethan felt both fear and excitement. "Ready how?" "I'm just one man." Her laughter echoed softly, warm and kind. "Not one man, human, brave heart. You teach others love stronger than war. That is the true power." The crystal glowed so bright it lit the crater around him. The moss nearby grew taller, glowing the same blue as Lyra's light. It spread like ripples on water. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're alive in this. Everywhere." "I am part of galaxy now," she said. "My light flows through life. You are the first to carry it." He placed his hand over the crystal. "Then I'll carry it to the stars." The wind roared suddenly, lifting dust and blue sparks around him. From the sky a beam of light descended, and not harsh, but soft and alive. It wrapped around him like a cocoon. He felt weightless. His feet lifted off the ground. The world below faded. "Lyra, what's happening?" he shouted. Her voice was calm. "I am giving you gift. My heart reborn inside you. Together again." The light filled him completely. Pain shot through his chest, but it was not pain, it was power. His blood burned like fire and light mixed together. When he opened his eyes, his body had changed. The glowing symbols that once marked his arm now covered his entire skin, moving like streams of energy. His vision was sharper, his breath deeper, and his body lighter and stronger than ever. "Lyra," he whispered, awed. "What am I?" Her voice smiled in his mind. "Half human, half starlight, my soul in your heart, one being." He looked at his hands, and they shone faintly, blue veins of energy dancing under his skin. He could feel gravity bending gently around him, just as Lyra once did. Ethan lifted off the ground again, not falling, but floating, as if the planet itself no longer held him down. "Go," she whispered. "Find the lost worlds. Spread our light. Show them what love can become." He looked toward the stars, his eyes filled with tears. "Will I see you again?" Her voice faded, soft as wind. "Always. Wherever light touches, I am there." The beam around him brightened, rising higher until it became a streak across the sky, a single line of blue fire cutting through the darkness. From the colony below, the people looked up in awe. Some whispered, "It's him, the man of light." Others said, "It's her, the alien spirit." But no one could deny what they saw. A human glowing with the power of a star, flying toward the heavens. Ethan Cole, the engineer who once fixed broken machines, had become the first of a new kind. A bridge between two worlds. And as he soared beyond Mars, past the moons and dust, he heard her voice one last time, whispering across his heart, across stars, across time. Love always finds a way. He smiled, his body glowing brighter than any sunrise. The galaxy had feared darkness, but now light had returned, the light of a tiny alien girl and the human who believed in her. And thus began the legend of the Starbond, the story of Ethan and Lyra, whose love not only defied the galaxy, but became its hope. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The war was over. The Transcends were gone. But Mars was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Ash floated through the red sky like snow. The colony was half buried in dust, its towers broken and silent. No voices, no sirens, only wind. And in that endless emptiness, Ethan Cole walked alone. He moved slowly through the ruins, his clothes torn and burned, his body weak. In his hand he held a small blue crystal glowing faintly, the last trace of Lyra. Days had passed since the explosion. Every night he dreamed of her voice, soft, gentle, calling his name. Every morning he woke to silence. He didn't know how he had survived. When the light had consumed everything, he thought he was dead. But he woke among the ashes, alive, the Transcends gone, and Lyra's crystal lying beside him warm like a heartbeat. He stopped near the crater where it all began. The same place he'd first found her. The sand was glass now, melted by the blast. The air shimmered faintly, carrying a strange hum. Ethan knelt down and whispered, "You saved everyone, Lyra. You stopped them." The crystal pulsed weakly, as if answering him. He smiled sadly. "I just wish you were here to see it." The wind shifted. For a moment he thought he heard her laughter, faint and distant. He looked around, but there was no one. Only the empty desert and the broken horizon. He sighed and stood up. "Maybe I should go back to the colony. If anyone's left," he started walking. Each step felt heavier. The silence pressed down on him like a weight. He missed her, not just her light or her power, but her presence. That small voice that called him Ethan with warmth and innocence. He reached the edge of the colony ruins. The old workshop was still there, half buried but standing. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, everything was covered in dust. The tools lay scattered, the screens broken. But on the table where Lyra once sat, the air shimmered faintly. Ethan placed the crystal there gently. "Home again," he whispered. He looked around the room. Memories flooded back. Her first smile. The way she drank water like it was magic. The way she hid behind a wrench when the patrols came. His throat tightened. "You were real," he whispered. "You changed me." Suddenly the crystal glowed brighter. The symbols that had once marked his arm flickered faintly across his skin again. The air grew warm. Ethan stepped back. "Lyra?" A soft blue light began to form above the crystal, swirling, taking shape. A faint small figure appeared, her wings glowing like tiny stars. "Ethan," his heart stopped. "Lyra?" The glowing figure smiled, her voice echoing like a dream. "I'm not gone. My heart, inside crystal. Bond still alive." Ethan stared, eyes wide. "You're alive? How?" She shook her head gently. "Not body. Only light. Energy of Bond kept me. I am part of you now." Tears blurred his vision. "Lyra, I thought I lost you." Her light floated closer, touching his face. He felt warmth spread through him. Not physical, but deep, like the feeling of a heartbeat beside his own. "You not lose me," she said softly. "I see through your eyes. Feel through your heart. I live. Because you remember." Ethan's voice trembled. "I'll never forget you." She smiled again, brighter now. "Then I never fade." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. A man and the ghost of a tiny alien girl bound across life and light. Outside, the first sunrise since the war broke over Mars. The red sky turned gold. Lyra's form began to drift toward the window, her glow spreading wider. "I must go. My energy will return to stars, but we will meet again." Ethan reached out. "Where?" She pointed toward the horizon. "When humans travel far, when they reach the hidden stars, I will be waiting." The light around her began to scatter, breaking into tiny blue sparks. "Goodbye, Ethan," she whispered. "Thank you for showing me love." He smiled through tears. "Goodbye, Lyra. You showed me what it really means to live." The sparks floated out into the morning sky, joining the sunlight. The room was silent again. Only the faint hum of the crystal remained. Ethan stood there for a long time, staring out the window. The world felt empty but full of meaning, like something greater had touched it. He looked at the sky and whispered, "Across stars. Love always finds a way." The crystal pulsed once more, glowing softly, as if answering him. Then far above Mars, beyond human sight, a faint blue streak crossed the stars. Lyra had become one with the galaxy, the girl of light, the memory of love that defied the darkness of war, and Ethan Cole, the lonely engineer who once fixed machines in silence, became the man who carried her story, the one who proved that even across worlds, even between human and alien, love can outshine the stars. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The tunnels shook like a living beast. The air was thick with dust and heat. Red lights flashed through the cracks as the Draxen hunters marched deeper underground. Their metallic voices echoed cold and sharp. Target lifeform detected, capture alive. Ethan pressed his back against the rocky wall, holding Lyra close to his chest. He could feel her heartbeat against his palm, soft, fast, scared. Her light was fading again. The energy bond on his arm glowed weakly, pulsing in rhythm with her heart. "They're closing in," Ethan whispered. "We need to move." Lyra shook her head. "No, can't run forever. They follow my core signal." Ethan frowned. "Then what do we do?" She looked up at him, eyes glowing faintly blue. "I can stop them, but need my ship's crystal. In ship near crater." "That's miles away," he hissed. "We'll never make it through the surface patrols." Lyra touched his cheek gently. "Trust bond. Bond Showway." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the marks on his arm flared, bright blue, and for a second the tunnel walls shimmered, revealing faint trails of light leading deeper underground. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're showing me a path." She nodded weakly. "Safe path." He lifted her carefully, tucked her into his jacket pocket, and started running through the dark passage lit only by the glow of his arm. Behind him, the Draxen's heavy footsteps thundered closer. Every turn, every jump. The glowing lines guided him like a living map. His lungs burned, and his legs felt heavy, but he didn't stop. Finally, he reached a shaft leading upward. Cold wind whistled through the hole above. The light trails stopped there. Ethan looked up. "That's our exit." He climbed the old ladder, each rung shaking under his weight. Dust rained down as explosions echoed far away. When he reached the top, he pushed open the metal hatch. The blinding light of Mars hit him. The colony was a field of fire and smoke. Black ships filled the red sky, firing down beams of destruction. He shielded his eyes. "We're too late," he whispered. Lyra floated out of his pocket, her wings flickering. "No, not too late." She pointed toward the crater in the distance. "My ship there. Crystal still alive." Ethan looked at her fragile body, pale, trembling, half-glowing. "You're barely standing. You need rest." She smiled weakly. "No rest. Not now." A roar cut through the wind. A Draxen dropship was landing nearby. Soldiers poured out, their armor shining dark under the sun. Ethan grabbed a broken metal bar from the ground and stood in front of Lyra. "Go, get your crystal. I'll hold them off." Lyra's voice trembled. "No, Ethan. If you fight, you die. Bond break. I die too." He looked at her with a small smile. "Then let's make sure neither of us dies for nothing." The first Draxen fired. Ethan ducked behind a rock, energy blasts hitting the sand around him. He threw the bar like a spear, hitting one in the chest. The creature roared and fell, but there were too many. A beam struck the ground beside him, throwing him off balance. He fell hard, pain shooting up his side. His arm burned, the bond symbols glowing bright again. Lyra screamed, flying above him, her tiny body surrounded by a faint blue aura. "Stop hurting him!" The air around her pulsed. The sand lifted into the air. The gravity field twisted, rocks floated, metal bent, and the Draxens staggered backward in confusion. Impossible, one of them shouted. Lyra's voice grew louder, full of sorrow and fury. You destroy my people. No more. Her glow intensified until it was blinding. Ethan could barely see. Lyra, stop. You'll kill yourself. She turned toward him, tears glowing on her cheeks. Ethan, my power unstable. If I use it all, I die. But Draxons die too. You must live. He shook his head. No. If you die, I die too, remember? Her soft voice floated over the roaring wind. Bond can break. If I give heart to you. Before he could answer, she placed her tiny hand on his chest. The symbols on his arm spread across his body, lighting up his skin like fire. Her voice was fading. You showed me love, something my world forgot. Lyra, please don't. She smiled softly. Now, I show them what love can do. With one final breath, Lyra flew into the air, her body bursting with pure blue energy. The gravity around them shattered. The Draxon soldiers screamed as their weapons and ships lifted into the sky, crushed by invisible force. A massive explosion of light filled the crater, silent, beautiful, endless. When the dust cleared, the Draxons were gone. The sky was calm again. Ethan lay on the ground, weak and shaking. The glowing marks on his body faded to nothing. The air was quiet. He whispered her name. Lyra. No answer. Only the soft whisper of the wind. Then something small and glowing landed beside him. A single blue crystal, warm and alive. He held it close to his heart. You kept your promise, he said softly. Now I'll keep mine. He looked up at the red sky, tears in his eyes. I'll find a way to bring you back. And as Mars burned quietly under two suns, a human engineer stood alone, holding the last light of an alien girl who had given her life to save him, and the galaxy. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The alarm screamed through Mars Colony 9 like a dying machine. Red lights flashed across the metal walls. People ran through the corridors shouting orders, their boots echoing like thunder. And deep inside the colony prison, Ethan Cole opened his eyes. His head was spinning, his mouth dry. The cell around him shook with every explosion above. He didn't know how long he had been out, maybe hours, maybe days. Then he remembered. Lyra. He turned his head toward the glass chamber across from him. The tiny alien girl was inside a cube-shaped energy cage. She was still alive, but weak. Her light flickered faintly like a candle ready to die. Lyra, he whispered hoarsely. She stirred, lifting her head. Ethan! Her voice was small, but it reached him through the thick glass. Ethan tried to stand, but the electric cuffs around his wrists stopped him. Sparks bit into his skin. He gritted his teeth and pulled harder. Hang on, Lyra, I'll get you out! Suddenly, the entire colony shook violently. The lights went out for a second. A robotic voice blared through the speakers. Warning! Draxon ships entering lower orbit. Colony defense grid compromised. Ethan froze. They're here. Lyra's frightened eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They find me. He slammed his fists against the cuffs again. Then we're not waiting around. An explosion rocked the cell block, sending dust and smoke into the air. The shockwave shorted out the lights and, luckily, the cuffs around his wrists. They flickered, then died. Ethan ripped them off and ran to the glass chamber. He grabbed a steel pipe from the floor and smashed it against the control panel. Sparks flew. The cube flickered once, twice, then went dark. Lyra fell forward, weak and trembling. Ethan caught her gently in his hands. Got you. She looked up at him, her tiny voice trembling. They had come soon. He nodded grimly. Then we run. He sprinted through the broken hallway, smoke everywhere. The air was thick and hot. The ceiling cracked, spilling dust and sparks. Above, a Draxon ship screamed through the sky, black and huge like a floating mountain. It fired energy blasts into the colony towers, turning them to molten glass. Ethan and Lyra burst through a half-collapsed doorway and into the open red desert. The air outside was cold and thin. The sky glowed with fire as ships battled above. He grabbed a rover parked nearby and slammed the controls. The engine roared to life. He set Lyra gently on the dashboard. "Hold tight, little one." She nodded weakly, her light barely visible. The rover sped across the red sands, bouncing over rocks and dust. Behind them, the colony was burning in a sea of red and black flames. "Ethan," Lyra said softly, "they not stop. Draxon hunt. Always." He gripped the controls tighter. "Then we keep moving." A shadow passed overhead, a Draxon scout craft. It fired a laser blast that hit the sand near them, sending the rover spinning. Ethan fought for control. The rover skidded and flipped onto its side. Ethan was thrown hard against the door. His arm burned with pain and blood ran down his face. He groaned and looked for Lyra. She was lying near the window, glowing faintly but alive. "Ethan," she whispered. "Hurt?" He smiled weakly. "I've had better days." Then another beam struck nearby. The ground split open, revealing a dark pit below, an old mining shaft. Ethan grabbed Lyra. "Hold on!" The ground gave way and they fell. They landed hard but alive, deep in the old mine tunnels. Dust filled the air. Above them, the Draxon ship hovered, searching, then flew away. For a long moment, there was only silence. Ethan lay on his back, staring at the cracked ceiling. Then he felt a tiny hand on his cheek. "Ethan," Lyra said softly. "Safe. For now." He nodded slowly, sitting up. His body hurt all over. The glowing mark on his arm burned brighter than ever. "I think the bond saved us," he murmured. Lyra floated weakly beside him. "Bond, protect both." He looked at her small, fragile figure, and something inside him shifted again. He didn't just see an alien anymore. He saw someone brave, kind, and beautiful in her own strange way. "Lyra," he said quietly, "why do the Draxons want you so much?" She hesitated, then pointed to her chest. "Core inside me. Power to bend." "Gravity," Ethan frowned. "You mean you can control gravity?" She nodded. "They want use it."
"Make weapon."
"Control stars." Ethan felt cold all over. "So they destroy worlds to get that?" Lyra's voice trembled. "Yes, like my world." He clenched his fists. "Then we'll stop them. I promise." But before Lyra could answer, the tunnel shook again. The sound of heavy metal steps echoed through the dark. Red lights appeared in the distance. Lyra's voice broke. "Draxon, and find us!" Ethan pulled her close, his mind racing. There was no way out, except forward. He picked up a broken mining torch and held it like a weapon. "Then let them come," he said. "They want you. They'll have to go through me first." The red lights grew closer. Shadows of tall, armored figures filled the tunnel. Lyra's glow brightened as if reacting to danger. And in the dark heart of Mars, a human and a tiny alien girl stood side by side, ready to fight a war the galaxy had long forgotten. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The red sun of Mars hung low in the sky, its light bleeding across the dusty horizon. The air was heavy with silence, but not peace. It was the silence before danger. Inside his workshop, Ethan Cole stared at the screen filled with warning symbols. His communicator blinked red again and again. Patrol units were moving closer to his zone. The colony was searching for the unknown energy signal, the one coming from Lyra. He looked at the small alien girl sitting on the workbench beside a pile of tools. She was trying to repair her tiny ship fragment using a piece of wire thicker than her arm. Her silver hair shimmered under the weak lights. Ethan sighed. "You're going to get us both killed, you know that?" Lyra looked up, her big glowing eyes full of confusion. "Killed bad?" Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Yeah, very bad. So we need to hide that glow of yours before someone spots it." Lyra blinked and then surprisingly closed her eyes. The light from her skin slowly dimmed until it was barely visible. Ethan's jaw dropped. "Well, that's helpful." She smiled proudly. "Hide good?" He chuckled softly. "Hide very good." But his smile faded as he glanced at the window. Drones flew by in the distance, 3 of them scanning the surface for alien energy. Every few seconds, their red lights flashed across the rocks. He turned back to Lyra. "We can't stay here. If they scan this workshop again, they'll find you for sure." Lyra tilted her head. "Go?" "Yeah," he said. "We go, but first we need a plan." He packed a small bag with water, oxygen packs, and a handheld power cell. Then he reached for an old rover map of the tunnels under the colony. Old mining shafts long abandoned. "These tunnels can hide us," he said to himself. Lyra fluttered closer, looking curious. "Safe?" Maybe, Ethan said, but it's better than waiting here for them to knock on the door. Suddenly, the alarm blared. Warning, unauthorized life form detected in Sector 9 perimeter. Ethan's heart jumped. They've traced us. Without another word, he grabbed Lyra, who quickly hid inside the pocket of his jacket. He rushed out the back door into the red dust storm that had just started to rise. The wind screamed, throwing sand everywhere. Ethan could barely see a few feet ahead. Perfect, he thought. The storm would hide his tracks. He ran down the narrow path between old storage tanks, heading toward the mine entrance. His communicator buzzed again. Commander Haynes's voice echoed, "Cole, stop where you are. You are moving away from the colony zone. This is an order." Ethan turned the device off. "Not today, Commander." He reached the tunnel gate and forced it open. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside, the darkness swallowed them whole. He switched on his wrist light. Weak, flickering, but enough. Once they were deep enough, he sat down against the wall, catching his breath. His heart pounded in his ears. Lyra climbed out of his pocket, looking around at the dark cave walls. "Dark," she whispered. "Yeah," Ethan said between breaths. "But it's safe. For now." Lyra floated a few inches off the ground, her glow faint but visible again. She touched the wall and closed her eyes. The rocks around them shimmered slightly, and Ethan saw something incredible. Hidden inside the stone were glowing veins of blue crystal pulsing softly. "What is that?" he whispered. Lyra smiled. "Lifestone," she said slowly. "From my world. Same energy." Ethan blinked. "You mean your power comes from this stuff?" She nodded. "Many planets have small heartstones, but Draxen, take all, destroy." Her face darkened with pain. Ethan watched her small hands shake. He could feel her sadness like a cold wind inside his chest. He gently placed his hand near her. "Hey, you're safe now. They won't find you." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. The Draxens had already reached Mars' orbit. Lyra floated closer and touched the glowing mark on his arm. It pulsed again, one heartbeat between two lives. Then her tiny voice whispered, "Bond strong. Together safe." Before Ethan could answer, a sound echoed down the tunnel. Metallic footsteps. He froze. He turned off his light, holding his breath. A search drone floated into the tunnel entrance, red sensors flashing. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, heart racing. The drone's beam swept over the stones, stopping inches from his face. Lyra hid behind his shoulder, her glow fading completely. The drone beeped, paused, then turned away and flew out. Ethan didn't move for a full minute. When he finally breathed again, it came out shaky. That was close. Lyra peeked from behind his shoulder, whispering, "Hide good?" He smiled weakly. "Yeah, you did good." Outside, lightning flashed across the red sky. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the Draxen ships were entering Mars' atmosphere. And far above, Commander Haynes was sending new orders to his men. Find the alien. Bring Cole in, alive or not. And so the real hunt had begun. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The tunnels were silent now. Only the slow drip of water echoed in the darkness. Ethan sat near a small fire made from broken wires and an old power cell. The dim orange light flickered across the stone walls. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly, her silver hair catching the glow like tiny threads of starlight. For 2 days, they had hidden underground. The colony above was on lockdown. Drones searched every corner, and the sound of engines filled the skies. Ethan hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the Draxen ships, huge, black, and hungry for war. Lyra looked weak. Her light had grown dim, and her breathing came in short, uneven waves. She tried to stay cheerful, but Ethan could see the pain in her eyes. He handed her a small container of water. "Drink," he said softly. She took a few drops using her telekinetic power. "Thank you, Ethan." Her voice was so small it almost broke his heart. He forced a smile. "We'll get through this. I promise." She looked at him for a long time, then touched his arm where the strange glowing marks were. The symbols flickered faintly, like tiny constellations under his skin. "Bond keeps me alive," she whispered. "But too long away from lifelight. I fade, Ethan frowned. Lifelight? You mean your planet's energy? Those blue crystals? Lyra nodded weakly. Need Heartstone soon. He stood up, pacing. There's got to be something around here. He remembered the glowing veins of blue crystal deeper in the tunnels. Maybe if he could charge her energy with one of those, she could recover. He picked up his flashlight and turned to her. Stay here. I'll find one. But before he could leave, a faint mechanical sound echoed through the tunnel. Click. 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 Ethan froze. Lyra's eyes widened. A red beam of light appeared on the far wall. Then another. Drones, Ethan hissed. He grabbed Lyra and ducked behind a pile of rocks. 2 search drones floated into the cavern, their scanners sweeping the area. Ethan held his breath. Lyra hit against his chest, trembling. He could feel her heartbeat, fast and faint. One of the drones beeped. Alien energy detected. Ethan cursed under his breath. The glow from the bond on his arm had given them away. He jumped up, grabbed a metal rod, and swung at the nearest drone. Sparks flew as it crashed into the rocks. The other one turned, charging its blaster. Run! Ethan shouted. He sprinted down the tunnel with Lyra in his pocket, the drone firing beams of red light behind them. Dust exploded from the walls. Ethan turned a corner, jumped over a broken rail, and slammed his fist on a rusty control panel. The heavy gate ahead of him closed just in time, cutting off the drone's pursuit. Ethan leaned against the gate, breathing hard. That was close. Lyra peeked out from his pocket, her tiny voice trembling. Bad machines. He nodded. Yeah, and there'll be more of them. But before they could rest, a deeper rumble shook the ground. The rocks trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then a voice echoed from a speaker, cold and sharp. Ethan Cole, you are harboring an alien life form. Surrender immediately. Ethan's eyes widened. Haynes, the commander's voice continued. You've betrayed the colony, Cole. Don't make this worse. Ethan shouted back, You don't understand, Commander. She's not a threat. There was silence. Then Haynes's voice came again, colder this time. Bring her out, or I'll bring this tunnel down on you both. Lyra floated out of his pocket and faced him. Ethan, no fight. I go. He shook his head. No, I'm not letting them take you. Her small eyes filled with tears. They kill. You die too. Ethan stared at her. She was right. The bond meant their lives were tied together. If she died, he would too. But he didn't care anymore. He wouldn't hand her over to monsters. He stepped forward, shouting, If you want her, you'll have to go through me. At that moment, a bright light filled the tunnel. The wall exploded inward, and soldiers rushed in. Ethan swung his rod again, but one of them hit him with a stun blast. He fell hard, pain spreading through his body. Lyra screamed, flying toward him, but a containment field trapped her mid-air. Sparks flew around her tiny body as she fought the cage. Ethan, she cried. He reached out weakly, his fingers brushing the edge of the field. The marks on his arm glowed bright blue, and the soldiers stepped back, startled. Then, everything went white. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was in a dark cell. His arms were chained. His head hurt. Across the room, behind a glass wall, he saw Lyra, weak, trapped inside a small containment cube. Her light was almost gone. He whispered her name. Lyra. Her eyes met his. A single tear fell down her glowing cheek. Outside, alarms blared. A distant voice shouted, Unidentified ships entering Mars atmosphere. Ethan's heart stopped. The Draxons had arrived. HFY Alien Mini Girl, a human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The sun rose weakly over Mars Colony 9, painting the red desert gold. Inside Ethan's small workshop, silence filled the air. Only the soft sound of tools and a quiet hum came from the corner table. On that table sat Lyra, the tiny alien girl who had crashed the night before. Her small wings twitched as she tried to stand. She looked weak but curious, watching Ethan move around. Ethan hadn't slept. He still couldn't believe what had happened. The strange marks on his arm glowed faintly, even when he tried to cover them. Every time he looked at Lyra, the marks pulsed like a heartbeat. "All right," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "You need food, or energy, or whatever you eat." He placed a cup of water near her. Lyra stared at it confused. Then she reached out her hand and the water rose into the air like a floating bubble. She pulled the drops to her mouth and drank slowly. Ethan's eyes widened. "You can move water with your mind?" Lyra looked at him and nodded slightly, though she didn't understand his words. He sighed. "Right, great. A telekinetic fairy from space." Suddenly his communicator beeped again. A voice crackled through. "Engineer Cole, report to command. Unknown energy spikes detected near your zone." Ethan quickly turned it off. His heart raced. If the commander scanned this workshop, they would find Lyra, and maybe take her away. He turned to her. "We need to hide you." Lyra tilted her head. She didn't know the words, but she could feel his fear. She touched his hand and closed her eyes. Suddenly, images flashed in Ethan's mind. A dark space battlefield, tiny ships fleeing, massive black ships chasing them, a planet burning. He gasped and stepped back. "You're showing me this?" Lyra opened her eyes, tears shining like silver. She pointed to herself, then to the image of the destroyed planet that lingered in his head. Ethan understood. "That's your home," she nodded slowly. He swallowed hard. "What happened to them?" She showed him another image. Tall, gray-skinned aliens with armor and red eyes firing weapons that tore through worlds. Then a word echoed in his mind in her soft voice. "Draxen." Ethan shivered. The name itself felt heavy, dark. "They destroyed your people." Lyra nodded again. Then she pointed to his glowing arm and spoke softly. "Bond." "Life," he frowned. "Bond? You mean this thing on my arm?" She nodded and touched her chest, then his arm. "If you die." "I die if I die. You die." Ethan froze. "What? You're saying our lives are connected?" She didn't understand all his words, but her sad eyes said yes. Ethan sat down, running a hand through his hair. "Oh, this just keeps getting better," he muttered. "Now we're literally stuck together." For a while, neither spoke. The workshop was quiet except for the hum of old machines. Outside, faint sirens wailed, patrols searching for the strange energy signal from last night. Lyra walked toward him on tiny feet and tugged at his sleeve. "Ethan," she said, her voice small and sweet. He blinked in surprise. "You can say my name?" She smiled a little. "Ethan." "Good." He couldn't help but laugh softly. "Yeah, that's me. Good guy, Ethan. The fool who bonded with an alien the size of a cup." Lyra tilted her head again, not understanding the joke, but smiling anyway. Then the lights flickered. The scanner alarm turned red. A robotic voice said, "Energy anomaly detected in Workshop 9, patrol unit inbound." Ethan jumped to his feet. No, not now." He grabbed a metal box, opened it, and motioned for Lyra to climb in. "Hide here." "Don't make a sound," she hesitated, scared. Ethan placed a finger to his lips. "Shh, trust me." Lyra slowly stepped inside the box. The lid closed just as the door alarm beeped. Commander Haynes's voice echoed outside. "Ethan Cole, open up." Ethan wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, forcing a smile as the door slid open. "Morning, Commander," he said, pretending to be calm. Haynes stepped in, tall and cold-eyed. "We tracked alien energy to this building." "Care to explain?" Ethan shrugged. "Old engines, maybe. You know how these things spark." Haynes scanned the room. His device beeped near the table where the box sat. "Strange. This signal is very strong." Ethan's palms sweated. "Probably just old circuits." Haynes stared at him for a long second, then finally lowered the scanner. "Keep your workshop clean, Cole. The colony doesn't like surprises." "Yes, sir," Ethan said quickly. When Haynes left, Ethan locked the door and opened the box. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes full of worry. "It's okay," he whispered. "He's gone." She climbed onto his hand and said softly, "Thank you." Ethan looked at her glowing eyes and fragile wings. Something deep inside him changed. He didn't just want to protect her because of the bond. He wanted to because she was alive, scared, and alone. He smiled weakly. "Guess it's you and me now, Lyra." Outside, the sound of engines filled the air again. Unknown to them both, something high above Mars, dark and massive, had just entered orbit. The Draxens had found her trail. HFY Alien Mini Girl, A human versus alien love story that defies the galaxy. The night on Mars Colony 9 was silent. The red desert stretched endlessly under a dark sky filled with dust and stars. Only one small light shone in the distance, the light from Ethan Cole's workshop. Ethan was an engineer working late again, fixing broken machines no one else cared about. He liked the quiet. It made him forget how empty Mars could be. But that night the quiet didn't last. Suddenly the ground shook. The tools on his desk rattled. A loud roar came from above, followed by a streak of blue fire cutting across the sky. Ethan ran outside. He saw something. A small ship, glowing bright and spinning out of control. It crashed just beyond the ridge, throwing sand and sparks high into the air. Another supply drone? Ethan muttered. But deep inside he knew. This wasn't human. He grabbed his light gun and ran toward the crash site. The wind stung his face as he climbed over red rocks. When he reached the crater, he froze. There, half buried in the sand, was a tiny silver pod no larger than a backpack. Blue smoke rose from it. It hummed softly, alive but weak. Ethan bent down, trying to open it. The metal was warm and almost breathing. Then he heard it in a soft cry like a whisper. He stepped back. The pod cracked open and a small figure climbed out. A girl, but not human. She was tiny, barely the size of his hand, glowing faintly blue. Her eyes were wide. Her silver hair floated around her head like soft light, and her wings, small and transparent, flickered weakly. Ethan's heart pounded. "What are you?" he whispered. The little alien girl looked up at him. She spoke, but her words were just sounds. High, musical, not like any human language. She seemed afraid. Ethan crouched slowly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." He reached out a hand. The tiny girl looked at it, then touched his finger. Her skin felt warm, soft, and almost like silk. But the moment they touched, the pod behind her suddenly lit up. Blue light burst from it, hitting Ethan's arm. He screamed as strange glowing marks spread across his skin like fire. The energy threw him back. He hit the ground hard, gasping. The tiny girl cried out, flying weakly toward him. When the light faded, Ethan looked at his arm. Symbols glowed there, moving like living tattoos. The pain faded slowly, but the marks stayed. "What the hell?" he muttered. The girl floated near his face, her big eyes filled with tears. She spoke again, softer this time. He couldn't understand, but he felt what she meant. She was sorry. Ethan sat up. "You did that? Why, what is this?" She pointed at his arm, then at herself. Then she touched her chest and his arm at the same time. A faint pulse ran between them like a heartbeat shared. Ethan's breath caught. He didn't understand it completely, but he knew. Something had connected them. A loud beep broke the moment. His wrist communicator flashed red. "Unidentified energy detected near Sector 9, patrols dispatched." Ethan cursed under his breath. "They'll be here in minutes." He looked at the girl. She was weak, her glow fading. He didn't have time to think. He picked her up gently, placed her inside his jacket pocket, and ran back to his workshop. Inside, he shut the metal door, locked it, and dimmed the lights. The girl climbed out of his pocket and sat on the table, breathing slowly. Ethan stared at her. She looked so fragile, but the energy she carried had nearly killed him. He took a deep breath. "Okay, little one. You crash into my planet, zap my arm, and now soldiers are coming. Great start to the night." The girl tilted her head, confused. Ethan sighed. "You can't understand me, can you?" She looked at him for a long time, then placed her small hand on his finger again. This time no pain, just warmth. For a moment Ethan felt calm, peaceful. Then he heard it, a faint hum outside, search drones. They were scanning the area. He turned off all power, holding his breath. The drones flew past, blue lights sweeping over his windows. One stopped for a second, scanning his door. Ethan froze. The girl hid behind a wrench, her eyes wide with fear. After a tense minute, the drone moved on. The hum faded. Ethan exhaled slowly. He looked at the tiny alien again. "You're trouble," he whispered. "But I guess we're stuck with each other now." The girl smiled weakly and said one word. It sounded like Lyra. "Lyra," Ethan repeated softly. The marks on his arm glowed for a second when he said her name. Outside, the red sky of Mars trembled with another faraway thunder. Something told him this was only the beginning. And in that silent workshop on Mars, a human and an alien girl took the first step toward a story that would defy the galaxy.